there is always this question around scale. How do you scale? When do you scale? Is scale really the holy grail? And I know that especially e-commerce companies or any company, really for every startup, I think this is very relevant around scale. And I think two companies that are iconic today would be MakeMyTrip from Deep and Snapdeal from Kunal that have stood out in terms of scale they have achieved in a very, very short time towards leadership. What I want to do is just ask one or two of my questions. You're all going to have an opportunity to ask one or two questions. Well, let me take that back, say that right. We have an opportunity to have one or two questions addressed to them. Deep, the question I had for you was, what are the trade-offs you had to think about in achieving scale? And in general, what's your philosophy on when achieving market share should override short-term profitability considerations? Would love to get your thoughts on that.
Can we sit and answer?
Yes.
Hi, is this...
Are the chairs comfortable?
Chairs are great.
Okay. Can we make sure this mic is on for Deep, please?
Yep, thank you. So thank you, Vani. Thanks for inviting me, but no thanks for such a long question. I don't even know what you're saying. I can't even understand what you're saying.
That's because you've moved to the next thing. Scale is done, over with, forgotten.
Not at all.
Like my first child being born,
Not at all. You never forget your first one. So can you break that up? I got the scale part, then I got distracted with
the question is, what trade-offs did you have to consider in achieving scale?
Right.
In particular at MakeMyTrip.
Right.
In general, what's your philosophy on when to sort of march for that scale and profitability and short-term trade-offs around market share versus profitability? What are the long-term, short-term trade-offs there that you would share as a broad philosophy? Right?
Okay. No, I got it now. So I don't think you ever forget, chasing scale. And I definitely don't think that we have reached the level of scale where, you can afford to say that scale is not important. In fact, if you think about it in a very funny sort of way, the bigger companies get, whether in India or anywhere in the world, particularly in our kind of space, internet, online technology, they actually get even hungrier for scale, and the need for further scale becomes more because of the expectations that we set up. So we actually become victims of our own plans, our own success, or whatever it is. So I think in our journey, we did have a pretty, tough journey for the first 5 years. At least some part of that 2 or 3 years were pretty difficult, where it's fair to say that, we couldn't think of scale. We could only think of survival. And the lesson out there is very clear. I mean, you can start having these wonderful notions of chasing the big dream, and you can chase scale if you have one very important thing, because that's capital. And the obvious trade-off, as we all know, the obvious trade-off is going to be around profitability. You are going to say, okay, how do I prioritize the two? And the first one, if the first one's going to be scale, the second one, and sometimes a distant second, becomes profitability, and there are many things in between. And I think the one in between to focus on at all points of time, irrespective if you're chasing scale or if you're chasing getting to profitability, because they could be at very different points of time, is actually unit economics. And I think the unit economics and how those are improving, the trend of those, and I was saying this just like part of this almost yesterday, so it seems like deja vu, and we have some common folks there, so bear with me. I think what becomes critical is how you're doing on a week-on-week basis. And I think we put in that ethic very early, and it was a discipline, and I don't think we just got it out of anywhere. It was because of what we had done in our past lives. Me, a couple of other senior folks, very soon became co-founders in the company. And I think we all thought, at least in one common way, hey, where are we going is okay. How fast are we getting there? And are we actually getting better from same day last week? And that's very important. It's hard to do, day after day, because of the kind of fluctuations that we have because of the days of the week in almost all of our businesses. But week on week is a great comparison. And I think I'd like to encourage all the young companies out there. I know there's some very seasoned folks out here who probably know this backward. I've probably taken advice from some of them, so bear with me again. But at least for the younger companies, might be seasoned folks, I think if you build that discipline and ethic in very early of measuring how you're doing and are you improving. Because if you're not improving, 1 week it's fine, the second week perhaps it's okay, but the third week also you're actually not improving on unit economics, which is conversion, which is profitability per unit, so or cost of customer acquisition. All of these per unit things, whatever your business is, irrespective. It could be a B2B business, but are you getting closer to acquiring customers? Are you getting cheaper at acquiring customers? Is the lead time getting better? Are you getting more out of the customer? Contribution margin, whatever you want to call it, it comes down to the same thing. If you're not improving, then there's a problem. So I think we kept that in mind through profitability chase and through scale chase. It was just a different metric that you were tracking. So in scale chase, it became, and then when we got out of, I guess, our worst times, and we got venture capital in 2005 from SAFE, I think we were very clear, hey, we are now armed with capital, and we have a job at hand, and we've got to go ahead and chase scale. And yes, we can forget about profitability for a bit. We were profitable actually for the last, I guess, almost 18 to 24 months before, or thereabouts for 6 months, 18 months profitable, but just thereabouts. And there was no way we could have said we're going to chase scale and forget profitability till we didn't get funding. Once you got funding, then you calibrate just how much scale can you chase, because there's that much funding. And what's risky, I think, at least that way in 2005, what was risky was to say, I'll definitely get the next round. And actually, dare I say, it's very risky even now. There was probably a little bit of time where people could say, listen, you'll get the next round. Get to this scale, get to this milestone, and you'll definitely get the next round. That's a trap. It could happen, and it'll be great if it happens, but it depends just so much upon macros. And we know we're probably entering one of the worst times. And it depends so much upon competition, and you have no control over the two. So if competition does a great job, this very nice company in your portfolio could suddenly not smell like roses at all. It could suddenly start saying, hey, what are you doing wrong? Because, and I've seen this happen, can't take names out here, I'm seeing this happening to companies in the kind of space that you're in. This company and portfolio is very happy with this company.
Sure. And
suddenly the competition has scaled up phenomenally, and they're saying you're not doing a good job at all. You may not get your next round. So you can't always build assuming you'll get that second round. Please always build assuming you got what you got. That's it. Keep a buffer, keep 6 months, because that's how long it takes realistically to close your next round, no matter what anyone says. Internal rounds maybe 3 months, but external rounds definitely 6 months. You want to keep that in mind. And you also know, and this is more for the entrepreneurs and not for the 5 VCs in the room or 6 or whatever, but when you're running out of cash, it's a terrible time to be raising money, right? We all know that, and I can see, Matt, you're giving those, yeah, I know the stuff, but that's true. Because when you're running out of cash, it's only your internal VC, and Vani is probably the nicest VCs I know, will be reasonably fair. And I don't need to say this, right? I'm just getting some chicky in one bag or something from Vani for coming here.
And vouchers from all our e-commerce companies.
Okay, that's really important. But by and large, don't count on that, because do your deals when things are safe. Chase scale, assuming you got, let's say you got 3 million, 5 million nowadays in capital. Assume you got 4 and keep away 1. I mean, maybe that 1 is half or whatever, depending on your burn rate. But then assume you got 4 and then chase scale related to 4. And various things will go up, it's not just marketing. I mean, the people cost will go up and should go up. I think the best investment you can make is actually in people. But sorry, maybe I'm spilling over onto another topic. But that's my 2-bit on scale, yeah.
No, I think this is apt and relevant, especially heading into some headwinds, it seems we might be. Although the central bank chief appointment yesterday might be some relief, we'll see as time will tell.
Just because he's a good-looking, Tamilian boy.
And from South India.
Good-looking Tamilian boy, that means he'll solve all our problems, yeah.
But Kunal, Deep made a couple of important points around capital and funding and as a factor to scaling. I think most people often when they start their company, they don't think about it that way. When someone says, I have $1 billion dream, and I know I never thought about it in terms of what is the funding I need from the outside, right, to really get that, right? So taking on the same theme from Deep, so what's your thought on capital and scale from trade-offs? How do you make the trade-offs? Do you want a buffer in the bank? Do you want to scale no matter you don't know for sure and there is a probability of going broke? How do you see that?
I don't think anybody wants to go broke ever. I think I echo most of what Deep said. I think it's important to always raise money from a position of strength, whether it is in terms of your metrics and runway. I think it's not either or. You can have poor metrics but tons of runway, it's not going to do you any good. Or you can have very good metrics but 1 month of runway, that's not going to do you very good either. I think our philosophy, at least in our kind of business, which is sort of capital hungry business, we've always made sure that we have kept enough buffer for a really, really rainy day. And so we've never had that coming to the brink problem as a company, right? And partly because we've been brave enough and have been guided well enough to, cut the cord on unnecessary expenses when the time is to do that. And those seem like, oh crap, our sales will drop 50% next month because we cut down marketing by 70% to save money and increase runway. It almost never happens. You realize that a lot of your, this saying, marketers saying, I know half my marketing budget's doing the job for me, I just don't know which half. and so that's actually quite true. Oftentimes you just don't know what half of your marketing is doing the job for you. So I think every company, I don't think there's probably any company out there that hasn't had to take hard decisions on its part to fundraising and scaling the business. But the key is to have the strong stomach to, cut the cord on some spends when you need to. I think that is very, very important. That is my personal learning, which in retrospect worked out for us.
I want to share an anecdote, but I'm also a parent of 2 kids, and they always get upset when I share anecdotes, and maybe my CEOs will too, I don't know. But, I remember growing up in a middle-class family where you usually sort of planned and existed from paycheck to paycheck. My mother always had a secret stash that my dad didn't know, we didn't know, and many, many times it came in handy for unplanned emergencies, which then otherwise, at least in the times I grew up, most middle-class families had no other way to handle. And I think Kunal has been very wise. I've observed that he has a stash, or at least something somewhere, that stash is the wrong word, so don't take it there. But that hasn't been fully revealed to the investors on the board. So there is a wisdom there that you should talk to him offline.
This getting deeper for me.
That's a good one. So, on the marketing, I just wanted to add, a great point, Kunal. I think, we started doing this some time back, and I think it's been pretty useful. Fortunately, it was never 50-50%, but so we started forcing a churn of marketing of between 10 to 20%, 10 to 20% of channels. So you have to experiment with minimum 10% of your marketing channels every 3 months. So every quarter you've got to experiment. So basically it's bottom slicing. It's obviously very hard to do when typically companies want to do bottom slicing, but it's not hard to do when it's marketing, right? It's one medium versus another, one vendor versus another, doesn't matter. But basically it forces the head of marketing to stack rank. And if you stack rank, there's something's got to be the least performing. So the least performing 10, ideally 20, but normally it ends up being 10-15%. You got to throw it out and you got to replace it with something new. Because something new is the only way you'll force them to experiment. Otherwise it becomes 110% of budget. Budget to budget hai, 100%, now give me 10% more so that I can try something else. No, you do a bottom slicing because that bottom slice of 10% is probably giving you 2%. Yeah, I mean, that's the reality of life, right? I mean, it's the opposite of a Pareto. So it's a good thing to do, and it worked very well for us. Yep. So we still do it.
Yep. Kunal, one question for you. Yeah. Actually, not a question. What is it that you would ask Deep here today?
So, I mean, I keep meeting Deep, and he's been very kind with us, generous with his time. So I've learned a lot from him over the years. I think the question that I've asked Deep many times in different dimensions is, as you start building out a company, many times the last thing on your mind is what kind of culture you want to build. And as you get bigger, you have no time to think of it anyways. So, MakeMyTrip's done a phenomenal job with building a great culture, has won a lot of awards over the years for that. I think for me and for any entrepreneur out there or any aspiring entrepreneur, that's a great learning. So what are the ingredients as an entrepreneur, as well as ingredients within the senior team that disseminate through the organization to create a great culture, right? What are the things to watch out for? What are the things to focus on? And what are the things to not focus on?
So I think firstly, when you start a company, and especially if you've worked for a few companies for a few years, maybe 5 to 10 years, whatever it is, 3, 4, 5 years at least, but got to a managerial position, whatever, I think you actually worry about culture. So at least in my experience, and I've shared this with a few other folks who started companies a little later after working, and they all said something very similar, that we wanted to build a company where we could keep out a lot of the not so good stuff we saw in big companies, because it is there. I mean, whether it's bureaucracy, it's red tapeism, it's a lot of stuff you've got to do which you don't really love doing, but you got to do it. And you said, we'll keep this out. So I was very clear on that. And then you want to bring in a lot of the stuff which was great in these companies. So I worked in 2 really good companies before this, and a third okay company, but I learned a lot from those companies, and whether it was ABN AMRO or it was GE Capital. And actually you learn from individuals and not companies. And there are some great things to learn and bring them in. So I think culture was very important upfront. It should be, because it's going to get tougher. So you are absolutely right. Maintaining culture till a certain number, whether that number is 100 or 150 is the norm of friends you can have. I also think 150 is the kind of number around which most people stop knowing everybody by name and a little bit more. It just becomes hard at work. So, and then you can use cheat sheets when you go for offsites and know 200 and 250 and do all of that. So I believe you me, I've done all of that. Early mornings, you're in the loo, instead of reading the newspaper, you're reading your cheat sheet, so that when you meet that guy, you know the person by name, but that's great, right? Yeah. But after that, it really depends on the culture that you've set up in the company in terms of your culture ambassadors. If you're in one location, it's a little easier because you will connect with others in downtime. So whether it's lunch or at evenings or whatever, you just see them. If it's multi-locations, even tougher. Then you need a culture ambassador out there who obviously is, I mean, he has a day job or she has a day job, but is also a culture ambassador. So I think that the key to this is really, it's got to come from within. So I think it's got to be genuine. You've got to be really, really bothered about this stuff. And this stuff is what? You've got to be bothered to a point it makes you uncomfortable if you hear something about, coffee place chatter, which is not complimentary about your company or you. You've got to be bothered. You can't say that, listen, big shit, yeah, this is, wo to bolte rahenge, everyone bitches about the company. No, you've got to be bothered, why is that happening? And if you're bothered, then you'll try to fix it. And then you got to surround yourself with people who are bothered. I mean, this is the company you built. This was meant to be that dream company. And where people, I mean, it's not like you're not going to be in the room and everyone's going to say, oh, wow, what an awesome company. I just love being here. That's not true. But it's just the kind of stuff they're saying. I mean, everyone will crib about food and everyone will crib about some that's normal, right? We all do because, you get sick of the food in 7 days. But it's like the people who have worked in other companies, do they realize what they get out here in terms of latitude? That's the biggest thing you can give good people. You can give them space and latitude to work. Money at the end, if you pay too much, it'll come and hurt you. If you pay too little, they'll leave you. So you got to pay pretty much the market. They've got to make money out of, the company paper. Eventually, that's the wealth creation. But do they enjoy working out here? Do you actually have very little politics? Zero politics is probably very hard when you go beyond a certain point. But do you nip the politics? And the most important thing is, are you truly meritocratic? Will you stand up and take the hit and actually take a hard decision in front of other people to support the right decision maker, not your VP, COO, co-founder? It should not matter. It's very hard to do, but the best way is to lead by example. you know, you take that fall, you become the guy who's got, you know, beaten up for his smart idea, and that sets the culture if you do it again and again, which is, it doesn't matter who the idea came from, it's the quality of the idea. I think good people respond to that more than anything else. They say, yeah, listen, it really doesn't matter. I mean, you know, of course, he's at that level, so he's going to get paid more, etc. But that I can reach that level. And then there's a clear path and there's transparency. So I think we try to do it even, we try actually very hard to do it even today. We are in the midst of hiring our new HR head. So we lost our last HR head. And we're trying to hire, and we're just going through rounds and rounds and rounds. I had 2 interviews today. Each one was more than 2 hours. And this was after Rajesh had already met the person. Others have to meet the people. And, you know, hopefully we'll find the right person. It's a very important person for this piece.
Yep.
So, Deep, as Kunal said, I know you and he talk to each other, share notes and share wisdom. But what would be a question you would ask Kunal today?
Yeah, no, I'm hugely impressed about one thing, and I've told Kunal I'm impressed, but I've never asked him this question. I've been very impressed by how quickly and without fuss, without anything, you managed to pivot. I don't know any company, actually anywhere in the world, which I know well, I know personally, who's done it so fast. So I really want to know how you did that, because I think that's really hard to do. Even if we were to try to do something today, it'll become even harder. How did you do it so fast is mystifying.
Kunal, as relevant to that, maybe a little background, because many people here may not know you pivoted.
Yeah, sure.
Now,
They may always think that Kunal is just this, you know.
Yeah, sure. So the story of our pivots began a while back, right? Rohit and I started Rohit's my co-founder, we were classmates in high school. And then we started the company together. We started as a coupon book company, that didn't work. We became a mobile coupon company, that didn't work. We then became a discount card company, that didn't work. Then we launched Snapdeal, which was basically daily deals, coupons, etc. It was the hottest thing in its day because of all the rah-rah-rah around Groupon. And we also felt we were the hottest things at that point in time. You tend to start drinking your own Kool-Aid pretty quickly as entrepreneurs. I realized that too. But I think one thing that has been very central to at least our team overall and the culture we built was 2 things. One, objectivity, and hence ensuring the certainty of success of Snapdeal. That come what may, we will make sure the company will be successful. And we will hence take whatever decision we need to take, however hard or easy, objectively to make sure that that certainty of success is met. Even if it means we have to work 23 hours and 59 minutes a day, we'll do that. If it means working 4 hours a day, we'll do that. Whatever it takes, we would do that. So we're very clear about that. I think the signs of the business crumbling of the original deals business crumbling started becoming quite clear to us in the latter half of 2011. We launched Snapdeal in February 2010. The latter half of 2011, it became quite clear that this business, given the amount of money we had honestly raised, we didn't think that it would deliver the same kind of return that our investors were expecting, and that was not our promise to them. Our promise to them was we were going to deliver some sort of return. And around the same time, a lot of consumers and merchants are reaching out to us that, hey, why don't you sell products, or we want to list our products on your site. And we had gone to China, and that's when we really realized that in end of 2011, we realized that that the real opportunity lies in selling products. But there were 2 types of business models in selling products also. One was, which was the existent business model where everyone was basically buying inventory and selling inventory. And there was the other business model, which was being a marketplace and a platform and an enabler for a lot of sellers to sell to a lot of buyers. And we just huddled with the team and said, look guys, if we don't make a change right now, with the senior team only, things are not going to look very good for us. And so we pretty much just decided that, you know, we have a thick demand pipe, let's attach a lot of supply to it from various sellers, intent would meet availability and transactions would grow, theoretically. That's what happened eventually, but there was a painful 20-month journey, 20-month being today, that occurred in the middle of that, and probably the more painful parts were in the earlier parts, the first 12 months. Where it just, you know, it's quite heart-wrenching when many senior team members come to you, close the door behind you, and you know what's the conversation they're going to have. They're going to ask you, are you sure we are doing the right thing? And at that moment, it's a deep feeling of self-doubt will run through your spine and you will not know what to say. And then you still have to make a straight face and say, yes, we are. And you have to do that over and over again till the point the company starts feeling we are actually not changing, we are evolving. Because if you make people feel you're changing, they open themselves to the outcome of failure. Whereas if you're evolving, they feel, hey, it's natural, right? Humans evolve, everyone evolves. So we never made anyone feel that there was some big change happening in the company. It was a natural evolution of the business. It sounds very rudimentary, but it was very, very critical at that point in time for people to not feel that business is not working and we have to change because we'll die otherwise, etc. That we made sure remained something that only the senior team was privy to. And over a period of time, people gained confidence. So what we made sure we, as Deep mentioned, very clear metrics on what this evolution would, how this evolution would need to happen, what would we need to track on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis, what was our key strategy? Are we going to be just another of the 800 other e-commerce companies, or are we doing something different? So we said we'll be a marketplace, not an inventory-led company. And over a period of time, while it was contrarian at that point in time, it worked out. And now we have other people doing the same.
That's amazing, really amazing. Yeah.
There's a lot of courage, and maturity far beyond years that I think Kunal and Rohit showed to make the pivot that they did.